I remember my first solo night shift at the Starlight Motel like it was yesterday. It was the kind of low-budget place you'd see in a noir film, where every corner seemed to whisper secrets and every shadow held a story. I was fresh out of college, armed with nothing but a can-do attitude and a desperate need for rent money. The manager, a grizzled man named Hank, gave me a quick rundown. Check in guests, handle any calls, and most importantly, no visitors after midnight. The night began uneventfully, the neon sign buzzing a lonely tune as the hours ticked by. I busied myself with reading and occasional rounds, ensuring the premises were secure. That's when he arrived. A man so peculiar that even now, my hands tremble at the memory. He was of average build, his hair a messy tangle of dark curls, but his eyes, they darted around, restless and wild, as if he was seeing things I couldn't. He introduced himself as Mr. Thompson and requested a room for the night. His speech was hurried, his glances over his shoulder frequent. I attributed his behavior to exhaustion or perhaps anxiety. After all, the night has a way of unsettling the best of us. I handed him the key to room 7, the one right at the end of the corridor, and watched as he practically sprinted away. I tried to return to my book, but the image of Mr. Thompson's frantic eyes haunted me. About an hour later, the phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. It was Mr. Thompson, his voice a mix of panic and anger, demanding to know why his room was infested with flies. Puzzled, I assured him that I would look into it, though I had noticed no such thing earlier. Equipped with a flashlight, I made my way to room 7. The corridor seemed longer than usual, the lights flickering in a way I hadn't noticed before. Mr. Thompson greeted me at the door, his appearance even more disheveled. He grabbed my arm, pulling me inside, and began ranting about the flies only he could see. The room, however, was spotless, the silence only broken by his heavy breathing. Trying to calm him, I suggested perhaps he needed some rest, that maybe he was seeing things due to exhaustion. He wouldn't have it, accusing me of being in on some cruel joke. As I attempted to leave, he blocked my path, his demeanor shifting from agitated to menacing. It was then I realized I was truly alone, with no one but this unstable guest for company. I managed to persuade him to let me go under the pretext of fetching insecticide, locking myself in the office as soon as I escaped his grasp. My heart pounded against my chest, fear and confusion swirling within me. What was happening? Was this some kind of a sick joke, or had I inadvertently stepped into a nightmare? Hours passed, and the silence of the night was suffocating. I debated calling the police, but feared escalating the situation. Instead, I resolved to wait until morning, when Hank would return. That's when the power went out, plunging the motel into darkness. My only source of light was the glow of the moon seeping through the office window. The phone rang again, slicing through the silence like a knife. It was Mr. Thompson, his voice now eerily calm, asking why I was trying to leave him alone in the dark. My blood ran cold. How did he know about my fleeting thoughts of escape? I responded with as much courage as I could muster, telling him the power outage was beyond my control. He laughed, a sound so chilling it echoed off the walls. "We're not alone," he whispered before hanging up. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of someone, or something, moving in the corridor outside. The distinct shuffling of feet, accompanied by a low guttural moaning, seemed to draw nearer with each passing second. Panic set in, and I locked the office door, barricading it with a chair. I felt trapped, a prey awaiting its predator in the deafening silence of the dark. The phone rang again, this time incessant, demanding. Against my better judgment, I answered, only to be met with silence on the other end. The sound of breathing, heavy and labored, filled my ear before the call ended abruptly. The rest of the night passed in a blur of terror and disbelief. As dawn broke, the power returned, and with it, a semblance of normalcy. Hank found me in the office, pale and shaken. I recounted the events of the night, expecting disbelief or mockery, but instead, I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He sighed, a weight seemingly lifted off his shoulders as he began to speak of the motel's dark history. Years ago, a guest had succumbed to madness, claiming the motel was alive, breathing, and full of unseen horrors. His descent into insanity was marked by violent episodes and hallucinations of insects and shadowy figures. He disappeared one night, leaving behind a room full of scribbles about the creatures that haunted him. Hank had dismissed it as the ramblings of a disturbed mind until now. The realization that Mr. Thompson might have been experiencing the same terror was unsettling. We rushed to room 7, bracing ourselves for what we might find. The room was empty, devoid of any sign of the night's ordeal, except for one detail, a single word etched into the nightstand: alone. The police found no evidence of Mr. Thompson's stay, no records in the guest log, nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, a ghost among the many secrets the Starlight Motel seemed to keep. I left the motel soon after, unable to shake the feeling of being watched, of whispers in the dark that spoke of unspeakable things. My experience at the Starlight Motel changed me, leaving a mark no time could erase. The night, once a canvas of peace and contemplation, now held a menace that lurked in the shadows, waiting. The ordeal taught me the fragility of sanity, the thin line between reality and the nightmares that dwell in the depths of our minds. The motel still stands, a beacon for the weary and the lost, its neon sign flickering in the night, inviting the curious and the brave to uncover its secrets. But beware, for not all who wander are lost. Some are trapped, forever ensnared in the horror of a night that never ends.